Good morning. Hi. Okay, so let's see. How did yesterday go? I don't remember exactly what got posted because I was having a hard time uploading them. Um, Yesterday was really fucking hot. There was a point where I had stopped and just recorded because I was like, I can't even walk in this heat. I could only make it like a mile before I had to find some shade and sit in it and seriously cool down for a minute. Getting a little better each day, but it's been a minute since I've been out in this type of heat. I mean, it's 100 degrees today. It's only, I mean, right now it's only like maybe in the upper 80s. I don't think it's been 90 degrees yet. Feels pretty nice. I'm sure in the sun it's a lot hotter, but it's also only like 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's supposed to be 100 or even over 100 today here in St. Louis. I'm outside of the city. Again, I don't know exactly what went through on the last recordings. So I'm like 10 miles or so out of the city. I walked through the entire city and then got about 10 miles out before I had stopped because it just got way too hot. So I found this there was just an abandoned office building that had some really nice shade in it, and it was in between all of these other businesses where I didn't want to stop in front of an actual business. So I just kind of parked myself there to cool off for a bit, and a couple cops came up to me. I know that I made a video about this, so I'm just recanting these things because I don't know exactly what got recorded. But a couple cops came up, asked me how I was doing, asked me about my things. They ended up taking me to the nearest gas station so that I could fill up my water, bought me a sandwich, which was just so incredibly nice, so incredibly kind of them. And they took my name so that they could let the other officers know that if they ran into me that I was who I am. They let them know what I was doing so that they would leave me alone. They're like, we don't want you to feel like you have any problems. So if any of the other officers happen to see you sleeping or something anywhere, we'll just let them know what you're doing so that they won't bother you about it. So that was really, really kind in order to feel like I don't, have to worry about those things. So then they basically just told me to do whatever I want, which was also kind. And at that point I realized that it was probably better. They were being so nice about it, but I was like, it's better that I, try a little bit harder to not stick out like a sore thumb about those things, if I have to walk a couple blocks down into a neighborhood just to find somewhere that's a little more secure, just because you don't want to be sitting around on the main road looking homeless, you know what I mean? Especially because I'm traveling through, I'm not looking for handouts or anything like that. I'm not trying to draw attention to myself that way. If people happen to come by or happen to see me in a situation and happen to offer something to me, unless it's a place to stay, I'm very skeptical about those things. But generally speaking, if people just hand me money and stuff, that's great. But I'm definitely not trying to be in a position where people feel like they have to give to me or anything like that either. Just it is what it is. I've been surviving with essentially very little, still been able to, I'd been given $10 the other night, and immediately after they left, another homeless woman who had significantly less than I have, she only had one pair of clothes that were very dirty. She had a pack of cigarettes and a little bag with I don't even know what she had in it. It was wrappers and stuff. She didn't even have any food or anything. And she had obviously been out for a while. And so I asked her if she wanted to get something with me. And then went up to the walk-up counter, and they wouldn't let us get anything because it was past the time. So I just gave her the rest of my granola bars, knowing that I still had the $10. And I was like, I'll figure myself out from there. And then I ended up to the night before last, met this woman at the bus stop who was very, very generous to other homeless in the area. The things that she had received, she would keep bagged separately, and then she would give out of those bags to other people that she had interacted with on the street. And she'd been living on the street for a really, really long time, and just managing that way. And she, told me that there were times that people are like, when are you gonna get off the street? When are you gonna, get on with your life and go somewhere? You can go to your sister's, you can go to this place. And she just had forever felt like she wasn't led to go anywhere. She felt like she was supposed to stay exactly where she was, and she didn't know why, but she continued just to help the people in the area. And then when I came through, it was like this blessing for her of a sign that like that's why she needed to be there, was so that I could meet her that night. And she felt blessed that she could move forward from that point. Um, so we spent a couple hours just talking and hugging and praying together, and crying about a lot of things. And then I gave her the $10 and went and got her a coffee and a little cigarello to smoke. Um, which, so then I was only left with the $6 or whatever that I had. But that wasn't, I'm not concerned about it. I mean, especially like I have access to the internet. If I really were to find myself in a point where I was like dying, I know that there's someone out there that would be willing to help me. And I'm just trying not to um, tap into those resources that way, because I am trying to rough it. Um, I really want people to see how difficult these things are. You know what I mean, for people, and how like, and the effects of different things. Like, it's easy for me to kind of, you know, use the healing that I've learned in order to remain on top, but like that's taken years to cultivate. Somebody that ends up in this position ill prepared, like I had been the first time I ended up in this position. I mean, the first time I ended up homeless, I got on cocaine. I was already friends with a dealer, and I had used a couple times at that point, but it was extremely casually, mostly with my brothers. And once I found myself in the position of being homeless, I was going through a divorce. Um, and then I was just living out of my car, and I was living out of my car because I didn't want to go back to my parents. And at that point I didn't have any other support, and I didn't have enough money for my own place. So I continued to work. I was working 2 jobs at the time. I was managing a dog daycare and working at Ralph Lauren. And then I quit Ralph Lauren, and then I quit the daycare. And I quit the daycare, or vice versa. I think I quit the daycare first and then quit Ralph Lauren. I quit the daycare because the people that I was working for were my soon to be ex-husband's like best friends and other family. And he was not letting anybody know that we were going through a divorce. And we were, as we continued to separate, he started like telling people that the reason we were getting divorced was because I had been cheating on him the whole time, which was not true. And in fact, he had a whole ass another relationship after we separated, which I did not. So he immediately started dating this girl who I'm pretty sure he worked with, and then told everybody that it was because I was cheating on him, which is why it was okay for him to do that. And I mean, I don't care. Like, we weren't right for each other. And I'm pretty sure that the girl that he started dating is the one that he's married to now. So like, it worked out better for both of us in those ways. It was just kind of a shitty time, because like then his family turned on me about it, and like there was no, it didn't matter what I said. One of his brothers was like, well, I get it, but at the same time, like, it's not like I'm gonna try to, be your friend when you and my brother are getting divorced. So like, I don't know, that entire time was a time. And I didn't want to, I was already having so many issues with my family. I had issues, but I hadn't confronted them. I wasn't fully aware as to why I had the issues with my family that I had. I just knew that I didn't feel comfortable, safe, or protected with them. And that every time, like the further I got away from them, the better I felt about myself. So I was doing anything I could to not go back to them, especially because their support was always like collateral in order to keep me close and keep me in control. Like, I would have to sacrifice my identity in order to be with them, but they would take care of me. And that just never seemed worth it. I would rather be homeless, and I was that way even back then. So I wasn't in the best position, and I was also extremely depressed because of just all of it. I quit working at the daycare, which really I hated, because I loved that job. And the job itself was extremely rewarding, but the people I was working with, it was just, it was too much because they were so close to my ex-husband. And then I was continuing to work at Ralph Lauren, but yeah, I think the depression really got me in a point where like, I didn't want to work. I kind of, yeah, I got so depressed that I was just like kind of at the end of my rope, like, okay, not like a death wish, but kind of like, I was just like, whatever, I'll just fade away. And at the time, like, I had started hanging out with the friend who dealt, and kind of started doing a little bit of coke more. But then when I quit my job, I had my last paycheck with which was maybe like $1,200, not even, it was probably like $800, and that's all I had to live off of. And I was like, I'm gonna just use this until it's gone, and that'll be it. Then I'll just fade away. Not terribly practical at the time. I didn't realize that, like, you can't just wish death or to disappear. Like, it doesn't matter. You're gonna end up just putting yourself in a really bad position and then having to deal with a really bad position because you're not doing the work. Like, it doesn't matter. You have to do the work. You have to do the work. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can decide what work you're gonna do, but you do definitely have to do work. And I just didn't, I was 22 at the time, 23 maybe. And yeah, I was in it. And it was the first time that I was in it, and I didn't know what I know now, and I didn't know how to handle myself, and I hadn't cultivated a sense of stability within myself or confidence within myself. I hadn't acquired any skills at that point that I could put to tangible use in order to, like, get income, get some sense of stability. And I had been relying on relationships that weren't right for me, to the point where now I became immediately isolated in my healing process. But there was no healing then because I didn't have any support from myself or from externally. So I put myself in a tight spot and was hit with the depression. And I did what most people do when they're in that position, which is cope. And generally, the average person, well, it's just the way it works. If you have not gone through a process of developing your coping skills into something tangible and healthy, you will naturally start off coping in a very low vibrational way. Most people cope through distractions and through pleasure, whatever they can find that way. And, the healthiest ways you can go about that would be to, there's distractions and pleasures that you can engage in that aren't unhealthy, depending on how you go about it. Obviously, everything in moderation, but, like, a good distraction, like what I've learned over time, like a good distraction is giving yourself a new hobby, giving yourself a new challenge, giving yourself something to work towards. When you're at an absolute low and feel like there's just nothing left, if you can find the energy to pinpoint a goal and work towards it, like even if it's something super simple, like, okay, you're fucking homeless and you have nothing to your name, but you've always wanted to, say draw or paint or do something like that. I mean, to write, any of those things, like, it's about those things too. Like, it's best to find goals that and hobbies that help you cultivate yourself, that help you do something for yourself that then you can look at and say, oh, I'm still able to produce even with absolutely nothing. I'm still able to put out something with my creative energy that is of value. Literally, even if you're homeless or if you're in a tight spot, volunteering, you would be amazed, absolutely amazed, if you have not done it, how much volunteering can benefit you. Acts of service bring us back to ourselves. It brings us to a sense of clarity within ourselves, because it helps us realize that we're not the only ones in need, that we're not the only ones going through a hard time, and that even in our hardest times, we're still able to help people. We're still able to give something. We're still able to be part of a grander community. We always are those things. We're always part of everything, but it's very easy for us to convince ourselves otherwise, especially if you're given to, like, unhealthy, relationships or like drugs and stuff like that. Those things are built to take you away from yourself. And, there's ways that you can use those things that can be beneficial. But if you're in a really low point, you're not going to have the energy to be able to actually pull from those properly. It's best to start off small and to be able to, like, put yourself out in ways that are rewarding from the internal and then to the external. It's always about, the worst thing you can do when you're in a hard time, which so many people end up doing, and like I said, when I first was out for the first time, it's what I did too, is to feel void within yourself and then to reach out externally in order to find some sense of validation or support or any sort of security. Because the thing is that when you don't have any strength in of yourself, you can't sustain anything outside. Like, you can't sustain it. It doesn't, if you turn to drugs, or if you turn to alcohol, or if you turn to sex, or if you turn to, whatever type of coping those ways, they're not sustainable, because you don't have the power within yourself to sustain those things. um, so and when you build a sense of strength within yourself to not need those things, or not have to cope that way, when you find other ways to cope with things that do actually benefit you, you end up strengthening yourself and then not requiring those things the same way. And to me, that's so essential, because like, I like drugs. I think they're great for a time and for a period, and depending on who you are and how you use them. I mean, I don't have a, I think hedonism is good. I think that pleasure is great. I think that the whole reason that we're alive is to experience things. But there is such a fine line between experiencing things to our benefit and using things to our detriment. And it's about a sense of self. Nobody else can tell you exactly what those things are. I've had people where I'm like, I couldn't do that. Like a dude that I lived with, the dude worked like 3 jobs. He was a drummer in a band. And then on top of that, he was like, every single weekend he was getting drunk, dropping acid, doing Molly, doing whippets, smoking blunts, and managed. And he managed, and that's how he continued to manage. That's just how his life is. I can't judge that. I always appreciated him for that, because I was like, man, you are on top of your shit. He was on top of his shit all the time. He could do those things without it being a problem. I don't have that sense of strength. I can't. I mean, I don't ever want to do acid, because I don't think that I can even handle it. You know what I mean? There's certain things some people can do, and certain things people don't need to do. But to each their own. And it is for the individual to find themselves within themselves in order to know what it is that they can handle, what's best for them, what they should do, what they shouldn't do. You don't want somebody else having to tell you how it is. The same thing when I've been out and homeless. Like, I try to avoid homeless communities, not because I don't care. When I find other homeless on the street, I try to be as as kind as possible and compassionate as possible. I'm always willing to give, even if I have nothing to give. You know what I mean? I'll try to help people. I'll try to walk them to where they need to go, point them in the right direction, give them whatever resources I know of, even just to sit there and talk to them, just so that they feel like a person for a moment again. Those things can come in so much handy. But I do try to avoid those types of communities, because every single it doesn't. You find people that have been in this type of situation, and it's almost guaranteed that it won't be long before you find people that are trying to get you on drugs, trying to get you involved in weird sex, trying to just live that way. And even when I first got into St. Louis, and the dude that I stayed with, the reason that he let me stay with him was because he helps the homeless, since he was homeless 2 years ago for a short time. He had been living fine, not the greatest, but he had been living fine when he was married, because him and his wife both worked. But she passed away, and he lost that second income and quickly wasn't able to afford his home. And even with the job that he had. And when he ended up homeless, it was in the same, I've been in that position. It doesn't matter how on top of things you are, all of a sudden you hit a point where you can't afford these things, and suddenly the only money that you have is what you have to use to sustain yourself when you don't have anything else. And it doesn't last, So he ended up homeless for 4 or 5 months. And during that time, he said that he met a whole bunch of other people who had helped him, but they had been homeless for years. And he's like, I just don't know how people do it. And it really gave him a heart for those people, especially because he also uses drugs, but that sort of thing, seeing people and how they maintain that way. And so when I was talking to him, I was like, that's, I've seen that. And I think I brought it up in a different video where I was like, when people end up in these positions, their inherent sense is to do whatever they can do in order to make themselves comfortable in that struggle and in all of that suffering. And the issue is that when they find a way to make themselves comfortable in that suffering, then they end up being comfortable with the suffering, sort of deal. You know what I mean? I don't want to just stay in one place and find a little home and find a little shelter I don't want to stick around in those positions. It's very easy to fall into that, though. And so that's something that he had mentioned to me, where he was like, well, I'll take you to the shelter and we can, do these things and get you started this way and stuff. And if I were trying to build from the bottom up here, that's the best, I mean, not the best way, but that's a great way to go about things, because you can get a roof over your head while you start working just long enough to get back on your feet. That's really all that you ever need. And you can, you can get food and stuff like that. But the issue is that when you start affiliating with those types of communities, it's very easy to lose a sense of self. It's not about what you can do for yourself. It becomes what others can do for you in order to get you on your feet. And sometimes people need that little leg up. Sometimes people need that help. But it's very important to stay, intact with yourself. Otherwise, you will end up giving yourself over to that help. Okay, well, whatever it is that you can. And then people just stay like that. People will stay using shelters for extended periods of time because they're not learning how to do something for themselves. They're training themselves to let other people do things for them. And like I said, when you're in a low state, when you're already depressed, when you've already hit rock bottom in all these different ways, and especially if you end up on drugs where they take you out of yourself, like so many people just don't know how to come back to themselves, and those sources of help end up becoming a crutch that they just continue to lean on. And that's something I think that's innate to human nature. We do it with religion and stuff too. We do it with our social groups. We all tend to kind of use these crutches to lean on and just keep leaning on them. We don't use them to build the strength in our own legs to stand on our own 2 feet. We like the comfort of having something to lean on. We like the idea that there's some support system there for us. It makes us feel more valid, that there's somebody or something willing to care enough about our weakness that it will support us. But like I said, it's just very easy to fall into that trap that that's what you need, that and it's all of it. I know people that make hundreds of $1,000s a year, and they don't know how to live their lives and be happy because they rely on that as a crutch. So it's all just about it's about mindset. It's about mentality, and nobody has the capacity. Everybody has the capacity to reach their own sense of selves, but like when there's all of these different coping mechanisms that people have been using over years, and all of these habits that they've formed over years that have distracted them from themselves, it makes it that much harder to come to that sense of clarity of self. So many of these people, like, they feel silly even trying to become self-empowered because of their pasts. Like, well, how dare I become, a respectable person when I've, been on the streets for this however long, or been on this drug, or been, prostituting or pimping or whatever it is. I mean, like I said, that's the downfall. A lot of those coping mechanisms too, is that like they build an innate sense of guilt that tends to hold us back. All of it. It's all very physical, but it's all a mind game that we play on ourselves. That's why it's so important to know yourself, because you can engage in anything, but if you're not within your power of self, if you're not in your own sense of self, like those things, anything can quickly take you away from yourself. And it's just, that is no more evident than when you see people on the street, and like I said, even the most well-to-do people, it takes a strength of spirit in order to work from the bottom up. And that isn't something that's innate, to be honest. Like I said, the first time that I was in this position, it did not come naturally to me to take my challenges and to use them as skill building and strength building and lesson learning. It felt like a personal attack. I felt victimized by my experiences. I was extremely depressed and turned to coping mechanisms, and then found myself in a worse position, and had to work from that. And if I would have kept, it would have been easy to keep going those ways. Had I not done the work at that time, I would have ended up in a worse spot, and the work would have been twice as hard. So I don't blame people when I see them in these rough positions, because I know how many things come up against a person to take them away from themselves, and how easy it is to lose yourself. And like, I thankfully haven't gotten on, hard drugs, but like when I've seen my friends and stuff like that have, like, it takes them away from themselves in such a way where like, man, any time that my friends have like been on that shit and then come back to themselves, I have nothing but commendations for them, because that I can't even imagine how difficult that must be. I thankfully haven't haven't ever lost myself that way, in part because I never really had that strong of an identity, to be honest. And for that, I'm thankful, because I'm cultivating it as I grow and develop. But it's a different process for everyone. And so I try not to judge. I try to, you know, just consider what it is in any position that I can do to offer that care to people. And really, like, this is a way that I can do that best because it helps me to understand better exactly what it is that people need in the very core of things. It's easy for me to come from a high mindset of, like, when I was living out of my car. Well, I was living out of my car. I wasn't on the street. I had a privilege that most people don't have in that position. I was able to hide away from things. I was able to get wherever I needed to get, aside from when I didn't have gas. But, like, even still, I cultivated a community for myself online where, like, I still have people that, like, even if I haven't talked to them for years, there's still people out there that care enough about me that if I were able to find a way to get in contact with them, they would care for me. Not everybody has that, and that's huge. And so, like, on top of that, to have the privilege of having a car or of having been able to save money in order to end up in those positions and stuff like that, not everybody has that. And then again, the privilege of not being on drugs or not being a prostitute and things like that too, because I didn't grow up those ways. People that have grown up with those things being more common, it makes it that much harder to not cope those ways when that's all that you've seen people coping. I grew up with people coping through religion and becoming more, like, Protestant about things, and it benefited me that way because I learned discipline, where I've seen so many people they straight up haven't even learned. It's not even their fault. Like, they do not know. And that's the shame of it. There's so many people out here that just, like, they're good people. They really are good people, but they don't know, and they know that they're good, but, like, they don't know what to do with it or how to, like, keep that up when the world just keeps beating them down and trying to pull all that negativity out of them. And it will, and it does. And that guilt is often what drives so many people to those coping mechanisms. They'll even try so hard to fight out of it. And the guilt of, like I said, of just having been in it or not being able to feel free from it, like, just keeps them in it. It's sad. It's sad. And so, like, it's important for me to be able to really experience the deep emotions and physicality and strain and exhaustion from these experiences in order to, like, reestablish for myself that strength of, these are the things that we do to get ourselves out of these positions or to keep ourselves in a right mind. And I do tend to take advantage of it because a lot of this has become so easy for me after so many years of dealing with it, where, like, even the dude that had let me stay with him, like, after talking to me for a day, he was like, man, I feel like I need to start going back to church and I need to get my life together. Looking at me, this dude is in a house that is nicer than any place I've lived. He's taking care of himself, but he's still struggling in all of these different ways. And, like, in part, it's because of the drug use. He's learned how to manage it better, and he doesn't, do anything crazy with it. But it's still a coping mechanism for him. It's not something he's actively doing because he enjoys it. It's something he's doing because he's built that habit and he copes with it. And he just realized after a time of being with me, like, maybe I don't need this. Maybe I need to get my shit together even more than I thought that I did. Like, okay, there's different things I can do. And that's what's, that's the importance of us getting around each other too. So many people, like, they get caught up in them habits and they think it's all they can do. And that's where they've been putting their strength. And so it's when you're holding onto a rope dangling over a hole, it's really hard to, like, be able to reach out and try to grab another something to get yourself out of that hole, out of fear that if you let go of the thing that's already keeping you afloat, that you're going to fall. It takes a strength of self. And you have to be able to cultivate that. And that's incredibly difficult to cultivate when you're in really difficult positions. That's why we need grace in this world. That's why we need grace in this society. That's why these communities are suffering, is because those that have all of the access to these things that would help people out of these holes hold them back because, like, gross, I don't want to help that person, or, like, I don't want to have to, like, smell that person for a minute while I try to help them out, or, like, I'm not going to let that person in my house and stuff. And, like, I get it, especially when, like, you can't trust people when they're on drugs. You can't trust people when they're in tough positions. So often you will try to help people and they will take advantage. It's not like everybody's perfect and that even when they're in hard places, that they're trying to help themselves. A lot of people think that that's how they will help themselves. They don't realize that they can do things for themselves. Um, and so it's all a risky business. And that's why I think it's so essential that like we build better systems in our community. It shouldn't, it's on the community, but like it shouldn't, and it's on every individual to be on top of themselves. But like there is a systematic issue at hand. There is a systematic illness that is preying on people and forcing them into these positions. And until we address that and, start to work within that, most of the things that we do are only going to benefit those who are really willing to put in the work. But the issue is that, like, most people really aren't, to be honest. Most people really aren't. And in the same way, people that are, already taken care of, they're not going to reach out and help somebody else either. And that's just how it goes. Like I said, that's why, like, it is when you're at the bottom, like, the best thing you could do for yourself is reach out and help someone else, because you'll realize how much power you have in of yourself. But most people don't. And yeah, that's the issue with the system. It has created a sense of convenience that has created a sense of complacency amongst most people. And it's just not sustainable at all, especially in a growing community. I mean, we have more and more people every day. The population is just in surplus right now. There's 8.5 billion people on the planet, I think. And most of them are finding ways to like conglomerate themselves into cities and, into small little spaces where they can just rely on the system and they can just feed off of each other. And like, of course, in those systems, you're going to have people on the bottom and people on the top. And actually, the way that the dude had put it the other day is like, that's how democracy works. You need rich people, you need a middle class, and you need a lower class. And they all build off of each other and kind of use each other in order to sustain that sense, you know. And it's true. And, he was like, without that, we would have socialism, and God forbid we have that. But really, it's not even sustainable for us to like try to establish socialistic systems when we have the issues that we have in our system. It would just become tyrannical communism, and is what we're trying to avoid. Even though, I mean, I don't know, the more far gone things go, the more like that's just going to become a necessity, which is a shame. I would love to see like the power of the human spirit be able to overcome those things in a way where we don't require tyranny in order to come to discipline of self. But so many individuals, they're just not going to they're not going to empower themselves. They're not going to take the power within themselves to overcome those things. They are waiting on some system outside of themselves to come and save them. That's my issue with conservative Christianity too. That's not the way Christianity works across the world, but that's definitely how Protestant Christianity works here. And so many people are tied into that too. Just this sense that like it's somebody else from 2,000 years ago that saves you, not you and your capacity to like actually overcome those things. Which, like, even in the Bible, it talks about carrying your own cross, but that's not how people view it. They all want somebody else to do it for them. And like, I don't know, man. It's just when I'm just, all I hear is people complaining about the positions that they're in, but not doing anything to get out of them. And so I know that what I'm doing right now and like the position that I'm in is quite extreme. But it's essential just to put a face to a lot of these things that people like talk about and feel, but they don't actually have a sense of reality to put behind it. And, it's important that we do. These things are real. They're really happening. And like, we really all are a part of it and adding to it and taking from it. And it doesn't have to be this way. Like if we're already doing that, we're already a part of it. We're all giving to it and taking from it. That's the power that we're putting out. If we would realize that power and then just make the choice to, instead of putting power into systems that aren't sustainable and that don't support us, choose to put power into systems that do, which also takes a knowledge of self in order to come down to the core of what those things even are, because there's so many illusions out there and so many things that are willing to come up and be like, yep, I'm the thing that you need. Okay. If you don't know yourself, you'll buy into anything, and so, you can't teach people knowledge of self because you don't know a person. Only a person can know themselves. you can example what that looks like, but it's still on the individual to make that choice for themselves. The best that I have is to try to show the active benefit. And I feel like the best way to do that is from the bottom up, is to get to the essential core of why certain things are necessary, and certain conveniences just aren't worth it. And I've been blessed to be in positions where I didn't have those things, so that I could find the power within myself to overcome these things, so that I could example this, the way that I am, but I don't know. I just know that there's a lot, and I just know that, like, everywhere I go, it doesn't matter. And I said it before, it doesn't matter, if it's people on the street or if it's people, like, I literally have friends that are millionaires. They're not any happier. They're still just lost and, don't, just doing whatever it takes to feel a way. They don't really, everybody's just surviving. They don't really know what thriving means. Like, even putting themselves, being social influencers and having hundreds of thousands of followers, they're still not thriving. They don't know what it means. It's because they haven't cultivated a true sense of self. Without a sense of self, you don't have access to actual happiness. And without actual happiness, what is the point of any of it? You can spend your whole life trying to make millions and millions of dollars just to find that it doesn't make you happy. And how much worse is it being unhappy, in a situation where everyone else envies everything that you have and they feel like that would make them happy and you're not happy. It's easy to validate that you're not happy when you're on the street, but when you're in a fucking mansion, like, it gets a lot more difficult. And I've had that discussion with people too. People don't understand why rich people would commit suicide or why famous people commit suicide. And it's like, they have literally so much more responsibility than they can even manage. They've put themselves in a worse position even for that. And that's the issue with the system. The people that we have on top that have all of that social influence should be people that have worked to get to that point and have something to actually show for it. But that's not the world we live in. We just go off of whoever has the most TikTok followers, and that's just based on whoever can make the most entertaining whatever for people to watch, and whoever can keep people's entertainment, for long enough gets the prize. And that's why everything feels so shitty, because what value is in any of that at all? It's like, it's so crazy to me, because we all went to high school. I mean, I went to Christian high schools, and even it was the same there. We all know how stupid those cliques are and how pointless those titles are, and how, like, the only people that actually benefit from those things are, like, when you put yourself in sports because you actually enjoyed sports, then it's fine. But when you put yourself in sports so that you could, like, get as far as you could so that you could go to college and become a professional player, and then you don't succeed in that, then you have people that, like, well, no, I just can't do anything with my life because that was the one thing, I don't know. It's so easy for people to put all of their eggs in one basket. People don't even realize that they have eggs. People have no idea what they're even doing. They don't know their eggs. They don't know their baskets. They're just living and complain because they don't know what else to do. And I don't blame them, but, like, there isn't a proper example these days for how to do anything different. Like I said, when the people that have the most influencers, I told my friend who has, like, hundreds of thousands of followers, and I was like, where the fuck are you leading these people? Like, what are they following you to? Where are you guys going? You don't know. And that's the issue. People don't know where they're going or why they follow who they follow. They don't know anything better or what to look for. And, if you have the capacity to offer anything at all, I almost feel like at this point it's a responsibility to society to give those things. Like I said, I don't know if it came through on the last video, but I saw a quote by Muhammad Ali that had stated that service to others is the rent that we pay to live in this worldwide community. And it's true, but it's beyond true. Like, we are all innately connected to all things, and to act otherwise just ends up creating divisions, and then there isn't unity. and we wonder why we're all, at such conflict even of self, but it's because like we've already determined that, oh, that person isn't worthy of my time or this thing isn't worthy of my energy, while we actively give our time and energy to things that are degrading us and breaking us down. And like I said, like I'm all about pleasure, I'm all about people enjoying their lives as much as possible. That's all there is, that's the entire point. But you can't have that without moderation, without discipline, without understanding of self. Otherwise you just drive yourself into a hole with what you think makes you happy. And it's very easy, it's easy for anybody. And I just hope that like through these things that people like can at least stop judging others in seemingly worse positions, to be able to acknowledge themselves and be like, oh, you know what, if I were in their shoes, I'd be there too. I'm thankful I'm not in those shoes. I'm thankful I'm in my shoes, and now I can decide what to do in my own feet, with my own feet, and to not have to lean on other things, like to recognize that we have our capacities within ourselves to do things. We don't, because like when we aren't self-actualized, then we rely on the community and rely on others and rely on that sense of community in a toxic way. It becomes very codependent. And again, it's like trading a sense of power for what power you can receive outside of yourself, which is just not sustainable. If you are self-actualized, then you are adding to a community of self-actualization in which every individual is now responsible for themselves in that way, but also cared for because of that. The more I love myself and care for myself and can give to myself what I truly believe in, the more I'm able to genuinely offer good to people. Back when I didn't love myself and tried to just love other people 200%, but was not willing to give myself anything, what I was actually giving those people was an expectation of validation of self through my actions, which was selfish as hell. But I didn't realize it. I thought I was being selfless. I thought I was being so kind and generous to be able to compromise myself for the sake of somebody else. But none of those people asked me to compromise myself. None of those people wanted to see me compromise myself. And if they did, they weren't people I was supposed to be giving actual love to. But I didn't have actual love to give to begin with. I didn't have any in me because I wasn't willing to receive it. So what I was giving was just, like I said, an expectation of self, an expectation of others to validate self. That isn't love. Love has to come from within you first. You have to know what it is for yourself. Otherwise, you don't know what it is that you're giving. It took me until I was I was 32 when I even started to understand that. So again, I don't blame people at all. I mean, I was raised in a way where these things were technically taught to me and I just didn't get it. I've known this shit for years and didn't know what to do with it. So I can only imagine what it's like for people that don't know, that haven't heard, that haven't seen, but that's the point. That's what I hope to do. Might be something very, very little, but again, I just saw the quote the other day too, that, we concern ourselves with what little things might affect the future, or might affect the past. We concern ourselves that if we were to go into the past and even step on a butterfly, that we could destroy the entire future. But we don't consider how those actions today affect our future, how even the smallest things truly do have a large impact. And to me, the whole mindset comes from that, where like in the times that I didn't feel like there was love outside of myself to receive, I had to cultivate it within myself just to know that it existed. Because truly, if I couldn't find it in myself, then what right do I have to try to find it in anybody else and to look outside of myself and be like, well, it's got to be here somewhere, but I don't know it. What am I even looking for? I'm only looking for what I think I'm looking for. I'm never going to find it. Because I'm looking for an idea, not an actual thing, right? And so, these things break down very simply, but in our, active day to day, it doesn't seem so simple. And we're not actively constantly breaking these things down in that way. We're generally coping and living and building on our experiences. And I think it's hard for people to break things down for themselves or to take the time to kind of step back and reflect. I've lucked out to been forced into those positions where, oh shit, now I'm working, but I'm working out of my car because I lost the place that I was living and I can't keep working out of my car when I have the dogs in the car, and what am I supposed to do? You know, now all I have is time on my hands to think about how I got in this situation and how I'm going to get out. I've been blessed for that. Many people have just continued to be given comfort and convenience throughout their lives to such a degree that they've never they've never had to learn how to think for themselves and how to cultivate anything within themselves. It's all just been handed to them, and that's a shame, really. There's a benefit to it, obviously, physically, but that ain't everything, and those people end up just as lost as anyone else. You know, I'm blessed to be able to have made my own mistakes and to grow from my own lessons. And I hope that for people, truly. I hope that people wouldn't have to learn through the processes that I've had to learn through, but I do hope that people in their own processes can find that time and space. And like that's another thing that I try to offer. Even just to my friends and stuff is like, if I'm around, then take that space to be able to figure these things out for yourself. I can take care of stuff for you. I know how to do things. Like, let me help so that you can have some time to come back to yourself. Because to me, that's everything. You know, it's just everything. Without it, we're all lost. And like every human being is essential. Every single person that takes up space is doing something here. They're taking up space. Like they are connected to the grander reality. And if they aren't self-actualized or aren't doing good for themselves, they're adding to the collective that is being constantly degraded. So in order to, you know, effectually raise that bar, it takes every individual coming within themselves, and every individual that does that is adding to the betterment of society as a whole, because we are all part of it. So this video is almost done. It's gonna stop recording shortly anyways, and I guess that's about all I have right now. I'm gonna upload it and then walk to McDonald's. It'll take about an hour or so, and then I'll go from there.